All right. I'm really excited this morning to be hosting Naiomi Kilbreth here with Laurel Tree Wellness. And she's going to be talking about herbs and how to different teas. And here's Naiomi. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much, Tegan, for having me on. I apologize, the video is not working well, and I guess we found out in the midst of the tech issues that the operating system on my phone is not high enough to be able to do the video. So we'll correct that in the future and hopefully be able to do another video at some point. But so my name is Naiomi Kilbreth, and I'm an herbalist and aromatherapist, and I work through Laurel Tree Wellness, which you can find on Facebook, and I will post the links to below that you can find more about me and my business. So as Tegan was saying, I wanted to be able to share with you some really awesome things about herbs and how you can incorporate them into your life. And so one thing that I've noticed over the past several years is that a lot of people are becoming more interested in herbs and using them to maintain health and even to correct some long-standing health issues. And I think that the reason that we're seeing that is because a lot of people are unhappy with the pharmaceutical options that they have. Some of them are not as effective as they would like, and others have side effects that are really uncomfortable. And so people are looking for other options. And plus, I think especially, with this new generation, we're seeing parents who are really interested in helping their kids to start off with more natural options and avoiding a lot of the more harmful side effects from things in our environment, and as well as medicines that can impact their health negatively. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love being able to share herbs with other people, is because I see the positive benefits that they can have on everyone's health. And not only can they be medicinal, but they can also be nutritional. And that's one of the awesome things about herbs, is that they are, if you use the whole herb, such as in a tea or a tincture, you're getting nutritional benefits on top of the medicinal benefits. And that's, of course, something that medicine can't offer. And so I've been using herbs for, basically since my first son was born. So it's been 12, 13 years since I started incorporating herbs into my life. And since then, I've just been helping more people in my family and my friends, my community, to be able to use them as well. And this past year, I enrolled in Heart of Herbs Herbal School. And so I'm now a certified aromatherapist, and I'm working on getting my herbalist certification as well. And so I've been able to expand my knowledge and my skills and help people in through my business in helping them to incorporate herbs into their life. So one of the things that I really wanted to share with you today is a special technique, which we could call the herbal triangle formulation, which is a traditional method of teaching people how to blend herbs in a way that will be most medicinal. I love that anytime you add an herb to your life, even if it's just one single herb, it will offer you some great benefits. For example, dandelion, which grows all over Maine, has so many nutritional and medicinal benefits. And if you just use that one herb, you're going to benefit from it. But the great thing is that when you take multiple herbs and you blend them together, they often have a complementary effect, and they can actually boost the positive effect that you would have even from each one. And the way to blend them together, there's a lot of leeway. You can mix different herbs and see what works for you. But traditionally, there is a method that has been found to be very effective, and that's this triangle formula. So on each corner, you would picture one different herb, and they each have a specific role. The first one would be the primary herb, and that's about 70 to 80% of your formula. And it's going to be based on one or two herbs that are really focused on the specific issue that you're having. So for example, you're not sleeping well at night. you might use chamomile as your primary herb. But there are other herbs you can use alongside of it that would be helpful. So the next corner would be called the supportive herb. And this is about 15 to 20% of your formula. Supportive herbs are tonics. They are more nutritional, they're very supportive of the organ systems, and very often you will find there are specific herbs that really seem to be tonics for specific organs or organ systems more so than others. For example, oats are a really awesome tonic for the nervous system. Mullein is a really awesome tonic for the lungs and respiratory system. So using a supportive herb helps to kind of almost fill in the gaps where the primary herb is not able to meet. So the primary herb is going to give you that, it's going to help with that specific need that you have, whereas the supportive herb helps to really nourish that whole system. And then on the third corner, you have your active herb. This is also known as a stimulant, and it makes up about 10 to 15% of your formula. And what it does is it's kind of a catalyst. It helps to really get the other herbs moving quickly and make some quick difference in the need that you have. So for example, Siberian ginseng is a really common, it's becoming more popular. It's a common herb that is an adaptogen. There are lots of adaptogens, but many times the adaptogens help to really stimulate blood flow to certain organ systems and cause some action to happen. St. John's wort is another popular herb that's also belongs in that category of being an active herb. So you can see you have the three different types of herbs there, the primary, the supportive, and the active herbs. And I love that there is so much room for choice in those three areas. So that means that you don't have to have like a specific herb in each one. There's no three perfect herbs for each problem that you might have. You will find yourself drawn to certain herbs and learning about certain herbs that could be helpful for each one of those categories. And so you can play around with it and find what works for you. But generally speaking, that kind of formula helps to put you in the right direction. So if you're looking for specific herbs and you're not sure where to turn, there are some really great resources out there. I would definitely recommend purchasing a nice herbal, like A to Z sort of book. You can find them at bookstores, yard sales, on Amazon. There's so many different great places you can find them. There are a couple that I really like in particular. The first is called The Herbal Apothecary by J.J. Purcell. It has 100 different herbs in it, and a lot of them are very common herbs, but it does not have everything that I refer to or, for. So another book that I like is called The Herbal Handbook by David Hoffman. And actually anything by David Hoffman is going to be really good. He, in each of his books, which focus on different life seasons, have what's called a materia medica, which is loaded with lots of different herbs, specific information about them, and you can learn about their actions, which means you can find out, are they adaptogens and thus active herbs, or would they be specifically recommended for certain health conditions and therefore would be great for a primary herb in your formula. So those are some helpful suggestions that I would recommend. I thought maybe it might be helpful to look at 3 different specific examples of how the triangle would be helpful when you're trying to create a formula. So everybody's going to be different and have different needs, and these are just examples. If you have a specific need, you can adapt the triangle to your own purposes. But knowing that a lot of people have been dealing with colds and that chronic dry coughs seem to be very common with this particular cold season, I have a formula here that meets those 3 criteria for the triangle. The first one is the supportive. I have the supportive herb, which would be 2 parts of mullein. And mullein is a tonic And so it's supportive of the respiratory system, and it's also a soothing expectorant, which means that it helps to get mucus out and stuff that's trapped in the lungs. But it's very soothing, and it's also a demulcent, so it's it's anti-inflammatory and that sort of thing. And so the primary herb for this remedy would be 7 parts of wild cherry bark. Wild cherry bark is known as the cough medicine of the herbal world. It's antispasmodic. It reduces spasms in the lungs, especially in the lung muscle. And then the active constituent for this formula would be 1 part of plantain. Plantain is a very common weed that grows around Maine and other areas, so you can harvest it wild. It's a demulcent, so it's very gentle on the lungs. It has what's called mucilage in it, and so that helps to soothe and protect the lung tissue. So that right there would be an effective remedy for dealing with chronic dry coughs from a cold. But again, there are many other herbs that could also be helpful for it. And so stress is something that a lot of people deal with. And so I created a formula for stress that might be helpful using the same triangle formula. The first would be the supportive herb, which is 2 parts of oats. And so I mentioned earlier what oats is, great for as far as being a tonic. It's nourishing to the nervous system. And so the primary herb that I would recommend for stress would be chamomile, which is very powerful on the nervous system and can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, all kinds of different things for the nervous system. And the last part, of course, would be the active herb for stress, which would be Siberian ginseng, 1 part. It's effective on the nervous system, great for brain health, and it is considered an adaptogen. And then the third example, the last example that I have, is for skin wounds. Now, this particular remedy includes one of my favorite herbs, the supportive herb being comfrey. And so comfrey is very healing, but you have to be careful because it can heal the skin so quickly that it can actually close in deep puncture wounds while the infection is still inside. So if you have a deep puncture wound, you would not want to use comfrey in your skin healing remedy. But for most cases, such as burns, itchy rashes, small, cuts or splinters or things like that, you can use 2 parts comfrey, and which stimulates new cell growth. So it's awesome for healing the skin. The active, the primary herb for that remedy would be 7 parts of calendula, which is antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory. It's healing to a wide range of skin needs. And I find this so fascinating that calendula is one of those things that we just imagine being that beautiful flower that grows in the summertime. And I never realized until, a few years ago that it could actually have medicinal properties to it. So many of those herbs that you see, or those flowers that you see growing out in the yard, like geranium, or calendula, have really great properties to them. And so getting back to the skin wound formula, the last part is St. John's wort, which is not only helpful for the nervous system, but it's also helpful for healing the skin, and especially things like eczema or other rashes that are really itchy. So that's a great active component for a skin wound formula. The last thing that I'd like to mention when you're creating a formula, whether it be for a tea, a tincture, or adding herbs to your bath, or a compress, I referred quite a few times to the word parts. And so you might be wondering, what does parts mean? And what it is a simple, old-fashioned, traditional way of explaining how much of a proportion you would want for specific herbs. So if something calls for 2 parts of this and 7 parts of that, all it means is that whether you choose teaspoons or tablespoons or cups or whatever measurement you choose, that you use the same proportion for each item. So if it's 2 parts of one thing and 7 parts of another, that might mean 2 teaspoons of one and 7 teaspoons of the other, or 2 cups of one and 7 cups of the other. And that just allows some freedom when you're trying to create either a small recipe or a large recipe. It allows you to use the same measurements in just a really simple way. So I hope that that was really helpful. And I thought maybe I could just tell you a little bit more about what I do as an herbalist in case you are still feeling like you need some help in creating formulas that would be helpful to you. As an herbalist and aromatherapist, I really enjoy sitting down with people and getting to know who they are and what their needs and goals are. And that's what I spend a lot of my time with right in the beginning, getting to know a new client. We just go over their history, their medical history, their life, and find out what their goals are, you know, because everybody, probably most people have health concerns, but everybody's going to be looking at their health concerns in a different way, and some might be a higher priority than others. And so your goals are going to be very individual. And so we sit down and we look at all of those things, and then we try to create a bigger picture of what kind of natural solutions can be helpful for their specific history and goals. And that includes food, it includes herbs, it includes lifestyle choices, it includes other natural therapies. And we try to create a list of options that really meet their needs and are based on their specific health. So, you know, if they have diabetes, I'm not going to recommend herbs that are not that great for someone who has diabetes, because it can interact with their medications, for example. But I might recommend another herb that has a similar benefit that we want without those, you know, unfortunate side effects. And so we try to look at that whole picture and incorporate a number of different natural remedies that respect their personal beliefs and values and that sort of thing. And then we check back in with each other, you know, in a few weeks to see how those herbs are helping them, how those different, you know, nutritional choices are helping them, and if maybe we need to make some adjustments. And I try to, you know, stick with them and walk along this journey with them together to make sure that they feel completely supported and that they're able to have hope return in their life. And that's a huge piece of it for me, is that I think a lot of the people that I see have just gotten to that point where they feel like there is no hope and no one can help them to feel better and feel like they can have their life back again. And that feels really big, but it is for a lot of people. And they just need someone, they need a friend who can stand alongside them and say, I see you and I hear you and your concerns have value, and let's see what we can do about it. And I always believe that there are natural health options out there that even if they can't cure a person, they can absolutely help them to have a better quality of life. And so that's what we work on together. So if you have any questions about working with me or about any of the free information that I post on my Facebook page or website, I would love for you to get in touch with me. You can always send me a personal message on Facebook. You can also reach me by emailing laureltreewellness@gmail.com. You can find me on my website at laureltreewellnessllc.weebly.com. And then, of course, there's the Facebook page and Instagram page for Laurel Tree Wellness. So thank you, Tegan, again for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And I hope that everyone has found something in this that's helpful to them. And if you have any questions, you can comment below. I'm happy to chat.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a lot of great information. And I know that for me, I have dealt with a lot of digestion issues, especially going through, I developed like a gluten intolerance at one point, and just changing my diet was a big part. But I came upon the dandelion extract of, I think it's called like a dandelion bitters. And that was super helpful. It was one of the things that, it was kind of before I realized I even had a gluten sensitivity. And even when I did realize it and I was working through it, trying to figure out the best ways of healing myself. And that was one of my almost like miracle cures whenever I, you know, felt bloated or, you know, just felt really gross. I would take some of that tincture that it came in, and within like 10 minutes or so, I'd feel relief. And so I've definitely experienced myself some of the very special, you know, results of tinctures and herbs. And so just for me, I've been really excited about learning more. And I'm so happy that you've shared so much with us today. Have you ever, do you know anything about Tulsi for stress? Or I know I hear about that quite a bit, and I've seen that a little bit in like teas in the store.
Absolutely. So Tulsi is also known as holy basil. It's not actually the same thing as regular basil that you cook with. They're two different families of plants. Tulsi is really awesome for the nervous system, and a lot of people find that it helps them with things like anxiety or insomnia or even memory and cognitive issues. My husband has a really great story actually with Tulsi. He started working at a new business, and he really was hoping to be able to remember everyone's name, because this was an issue that he had where, you go into a new place and you introduce yourself and then you can't remember everyone's name and that you talk to. So I suggested that he try holy basil, and he did, and he had been taking it for a couple of weeks every day in tincture form. And then it was less than a week, I think by like day 3, he felt like he had everyone's name memorized. And there was over 20 people in that business that he worked with directly. So it was
Wow.
really exciting to see that happen so quickly for him.
That's all. I'm going to have to keep that in mind, because I know that's something that I've always struggled with. So that might be helpful for myself too. So
absolutely. It's fun to share stories to see what has worked for different people and experiment with what might help you for your own goals. Definitely.
Yeah. And I know another one that I see quite a bit that I don't know too much about is rhodiola. Are you familiar with that one at all? And
yes, so I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Rhodiola, I believe that one does help with brain health as well. So I think that one is also a nervine. I'm sure that has I think it's an adaptogen. So it's supportive to the nervous system in general. And I believe that one is recommended as well for people with sleep and anxiety issues.
Okay. Wow, I wish that I knew you like 5 years ago when I was first trying to figure out what was going on. And I know that I had gone to my doctor at the time, and she told me that I was completely fine. She didn't really know even then that I had a gluten sensitivity. Mm-hmm. And I did figure that out myself after going through like an elimination diet.
Awesome.
And so that was like super helpful. And I know that just learning about a lot of the natural remedies, such as herbs and teas and tinctures and plants that you can find locally even, is really empowering. It can be really helpful. And so it's really great that you're sharing all your knowledge, and I'll definitely have to keep in touch with you for the future.
Absolutely.
And I know that you had talked about even plants in the in the local area. Do you have any favorite plants that that you use quite a bit, or that you find in the Maine area?
Comfrey is definitely my favorite plant. It's the first one that I started working with, and it does grow wild, but mostly because it escaped cultivation. So it does spread, but it's a very healing plant. So I love that. But other plants that I've been spending a lot of time with include plantain, which is a weed that grows in most people's yards. Dandelion is, of course, amazing in so many ways. St. John's wort grows wild in Maine. Mullein grows wild in Maine. That's one that I have definitely harvested from my yard. And a new one that I've been harvesting from around my property is goldenrod, which is that nice tall, it's like 3 to 4 feet tall stalk that has nice yellow flowers on the top. It's an old Native American herb, or, is used by Native Americans for any kind of respiratory or immune system need. So people would use it for colds and flus and that sort of thing, which is really exciting.
Yes. And so when people are looking for herbs themselves, have you heard of anything to be careful of, maybe when identifying it? Or have you ever heard of, like, can you overdo it on any specific herb? I know that there's usually a bell curve to most things that we take. So is there anything that we should be careful of?
That's a great question. I would say that if you're concerned about taking too much of something, essential oils are actually the most concentrated form of plant medicine, and those are the ones that you have to be the most careful about, and make sure that you're learning how to use them properly. When it comes to whole plants, such as using them in tincture form or in teas or capsules, just start off with a recommended dose, which, usually comes, if you buy them pre-made, it comes right on the bottle. Start with a lower dose because some people do respond quite well to the lowest dose, and then work your way up if you're not seeing a response. But it can take between 1 to 4 weeks to notice a difference for some herbs, depending on how strong they are. Because they're like the slow and steady, racer, where they take their time, but they do a more effective job. So it can take a few days at least to notice a difference for some things. If you are taking any medications, however, it would be really important to make sure that before you take any herbal remedy, whatever form it is, that you make sure that there's no contraindications for the medications that you're taking, especially things like blood thinners or diabetic medications or anti-anxiety medications, because there are definitely some herbs that can basically, they accentuate the effect of the medication, so you're going to get a much stronger effect than you really want to have with your medication.
Yeah. And so I actually had gone through a process with my dog the past couple years where he has developed, he had gotten, I'm pretty sure, Babesia and possibly Lyme disease. Mm-hmm. And he got really sick. We almost lost him a few different times. I had taken him to a lot of different vets, and we ended up, I have a whole story about that, about going to the vets and stuff. Mm-hmm. With my own experience, but I ended up being denied a lot of life-saving medications at the time. And so I was kind of forced into giving him more of, natural remedies. Mm-hmm. And I'm so excited and really happy because he's just a really special dog. Definitely. and he has come such a far way. He's almost like a puppy all over again. He's really healed himself, and I used a lot of different, there was a lot of different algae that I used, like mm-hmm. spirulina, chlorella, things like that. And so I definitely know that there's a lot of power in the plants that I never really thought about. Have you ever dealt with giving them to any other kind of animals before, or?
Well, I personally do not have any pets right now. That will be changing in the next year or so, I think. But I have used some natural remedies on chickens personally, and I've helped other people use them on dogs and cats, horses. I've had a few other requests, but oftentimes I end up referring people to other resources for animals just because I like to help people with things that I have more experience with. And so I know that pets do respond differently to herbs than people do. Their livers and kidneys work a little bit differently, and so they can process things in ways that we don't. And so if someone comes to me looking for assistance, I would certainly help them, but I would be relying more heavily on other resources from, veterinarians that have worked with herbs and things like that in order to kind of be the facilitator between a client and the actual resource, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. I was just curious. And I know that you had mentioned essential oils, and I had heard over and over again to really be careful because they're really strong, especially when applying on the skin. And if certain essential oils, you want a carrier oil to mix with it or to dilute it in some way. Right. And I know that I had heard that all the time, and I ignored their advice when I had used oregano oil, which I know is really strong. That is strong. And I had applied it to my skin. So just for anyone watching, listen when people say that, because I did get, I guess you would call it like a chemical burn of some sort from the oregano oil. And gladly, I, did everything I could to heal it as fast as I could. And I have no marks or no scars but I have heard that that is possible. And so just a warning for everybody else, don't do what I did, and just be careful and maybe look up, especially when you're learning about essential oils. So
absolutely. So there's actually an app that I would recommend if you're using essential oils. It's called Modern Essentials, and you can download it. I think there's a free version that's pretty simple, but the app, the primary one is like $7, but you can enter in certain conditions that you might have and look for essential oils that could be helpful that way. But you can also enter in specific essential oils and find out what, how to use it safely and what it can be used for. So that's a really great resource. And you also want to make sure that you're using 100% pure essential oils, because there's a lot of different options out there for oils, and it can be very confusing. But my number one recommendation for that is to avoid oils that you would buy in a box store. If you see them lined up on the shelf and they're all, they all cost $7, then they're not essential. They're not real essential oils. They're mostly made of fillers and alcohol and fixed oils like vegetable oils and that sort of thing. So you're not going to get medicinal benefit from those, and they can actually be quite dangerous if you're trying to use them medicinally. But there are lots of great options for essential oils, especially if you go to a local natural food store or natural health store. I use doTERRA essential oils. So if you have questions about that, you can certainly ask me. But yeah, the essential oils can be really awesome, but they're also very powerful. So you just have to be careful.
Yeah, all good to know. And I'll keep that brand in mind as well. So I'm trying to think if I have any other question. Again, if anyone's watching and have any questions, feel free to comment below. And let me see. I think that's all the questions that I had at the top of my list. I appreciate that you came on this morning and gave me some time, and absolutely. I look forward, hopefully we can figure out the whole, I know I had some struggles with the audio also this morning, so we'll get a little bit better at this as we go.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Tegan. It's been great being here with you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so thank you everyone for joining me this morning, and I'm drinking some tea right now that I grabbed. It's from Tea Well. Actually, I've never had this brand before. I just got it at Hannaford's. I think it's like a ginger mint mix, and I'm really looking forward to doing more of my own blends in the future and kind of using more of the plants around me. So just learning about all that now. Shout out to Hannah Gentempo for my Aries cup that I'm drinking out of this morning too. And so thank you for listening, and join me for the future. I'm going to have a couple more talks this week. If anyone else has any other, I'm looking for either knowledge on something that you do or that you're a hobby that you may do, or even if you want to come on and showcase a talent of some kind. If you're a dancer, a singer, a musician, you can, it's pretty much open to a lot of possibilities. So just message me and we'll set something up. So thank you for joining me, and see you later.